Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. Today we are going to discuss about the recent initiative that has been taken by two Scandinavian countries, that's Sweden and Finland, to join NATO, that is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So in this particular video we are going to discuss about that what are the reasons why NATO has the Sweden and Finland have decided to join NATO, and what is going to be the overall challenges and implications of this process and in this process. So let us begin first to give you a slight background about the context in which we are discussing these issues. So of course, since the war in Ukraine started on 24th of February, and since then almost 3 months have passed, so continuously debating for 3-month period, the both countries have agreed to formally apply for membership of NATO. NATO now is a US-led security alliance that was forged mainly during the Cold War era to defend its member from the Soviet adventurism or Soviet expansionism. So this is a very important shift because for we can say Sweden for 200 years and Finland for almost 60 years, they have decided to remain neutral. However, as of now, we are seeing a very monumental shift in the history of the Sweden and Finland, that they have shedded off their neutrality, wartime neutrality, and they have shedded off their policy of staying out of any military alliances and have decided to join NATO. So before understanding that what are the challenges that these countries will have to face in getting the membership, and what will the overall implications, especially in the Europe, of this particular step. But before that, let's try to understand slightly about the history of neutrality. And first of all, let's talk about the neutrality of Finland. So from a very early period of history, we can say since the World War I itself, Finland has decided that as far as its foreign policy and security priority is concerned, they will stay out of any superpower rivalry. Especially this policy was emphasized upon in the Cold War period. Now, Cold War was an era when two superpowers of world, that is USA on the one hand and Soviet Union, that is USSR on the other hand, were having quite a kind of tussle in especially around the European region. So taking help of this particular policies, the Finland was able to maintain cordial ties with both bloc, that means Soviet bloc as well as the American bloc. And not even that, they even signed a treaty of friendship, cooperation, mutual assistance with Soviet Union. And to a large extent, when all the other countries, nearby countries like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania were undergoing Soviet expansionism and so becoming member of Soviet Union, Finland was spared that fate. So this policy of neutrality has actually helped Finland a lot. And how it has helped Finland, we can understand by simple looking at this statement that was given by the former Prime Minister of Finland, that the neutrality policy of Finland has allowed the country to pursue the path of democracy and capitalism while staying out of the conflict between the great powers. Now try to compare the situation of Finland with the other Baltic states that are very near to the Finland, that is, as we discussed before, Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia. They became part of Soviet Union, and as a result of becoming a part of Soviet Union, the principles, or we can say the philosophy of communism was imposed upon them. And for a longer period of time, there was kind of tussle going on between capitalism and communism. And that is why these countries were not able to grow economically or develop economically as much as their Scandinavian partners. So in this way, Finland was lucky, and it has, we can say, it has developed also to a larger extent and has followed the path of capitalism and democracy. Now, what about the neutrality of Sweden? So Sweden's neutrality traced back to early 19th century, and largely it was held during the World War II period. However, there is some dispute because some historians suggest that Sweden have allegedly supported the Hitler's regime during the World War II. Then often described, if we talk about the neutrality or the political neutrality of the Sweden, it has been often described as the other side of its social welfareism and as the two pillars of its national identity. The Sweden's national identity basically hangs around two basic concepts. First is that the social welfare, and second is the politically neutral or militarily neutral. However, there has been a policy of contradictions if you look at the neutrality of Sweden. Why policy of contradictions? Because if you look at historically during the 1970s, when the US was engaged in a war in Vietnam, Sweden had taken a very anti-war stance. That means it was opposing United States of America. But at the same time, Sweden also have signed a defense pact with United States of America. So that is first contradiction. The second contradiction arises that despite preaching for non-disarmament and we can say having a peaceful approach, Sweden was developing its defense industry to a very large extent, and it has a very well functioning, well developed defense industry. So that is why it is called as Sweden's neutrality is called as policy of contradictions. Now, this policy of neutrality has also helped Sweden a lot because it helped it play the role of pacifist country that preached disarmament in spite of its flourishing armament industry. So Sweden was not only making arms for this itself, but is also largely exporting its arm and different fighter jets to other countries also. For example, India, we also have this Bofors that was largely, we can say, imported during the Rajiv Gandhi's period, which was also in kind of scandal that happened in defense industry of India that was actually imported from Sweden. Now the question comes that why both the countries have shaded off their this militarily neutral approach, why the shift has come. So shift actually started to occur in the year 2014 when Russia has annexed the Crimean Peninsula of Ukraine. The annexation of this Crimea actually caused a lot of discontentment among the people of these countries, and we can see since then there has been a continuous increase in the number of people who are supporting the membership of NATO. And this was given a further boost when in this year, February 2022, Russia invaded or went on the full invasion of Ukraine. And that is when we see that before this invasion, about 25 to 30% of the public in both countries were supporting NATO membership, while just after the invasion, that membership has shot up to 75%. So it is not only that the political parties of this country want to have membership, it is overall consensus of the, we can say, the citizens of the countries that wanted NATO membership to have a sense of security. And they believe that strengthening the membership of this country will strengthen European Union, strengthen NATO, and would act as further deterrent against Russia. If Russia want to have a more military adventurism against these two countries also. And especially this becomes very, very important for Finland because Finland has actually faced the wrath of Soviet Union in 1939 when Soviet Union waged a war, and despite a large extent of heroism shown by the Finnish soldier, they ended up losing about 10% of their territory. So the Russian invasion of Ukraine has actually kind of triggered this whole past memory, and that is why also we can understand that large number of people are supporting the membership of Finland in NATO. So, since the both countries have applied for NATO membership, let us try to understand about how the membership process goes on, or what are the eligibility criteria to become a NATO member. So, as per the NATO charter, the NATO membership and the NATO follows a kind of open door policy. Open door policy basically suggests that the membership is open to all European nations that fulfill certain criteria. So, what are these criteria? So, four important criteria are there. The first criteria is the country that is willing to apply or willing to become a NATO member should have ability as well as willingness to make a military contribution to the NATO operations. That makes sense because NATO obviously is a military alliance, a military bloc. Then the second important eligibility criteria is that the country should have a functioning democratic political system based on market economy. That means they should have a kind of free market approach and should also have a democratic setup to run or rule the country. The third criteria is the country should have engaged in a fair treatment of minority population. There should not be such instances of ethnic cleansing or majoritarianism, and also they should show a strong commitment to resolve any kind of conflicts peacefully. And the last criteria is that in a country there should be a democratic civil military relations and institutions. So any European country that is fulfilling these criteria is able and is eligible to apply for NATO membership. Now, once the application has been submitted, then to finalize the membership, the NATO requires unanimous consent of all the members. Unanimous consent means currently NATO has around 30 members, so all 30 member countries have to individually agree to admit any new members. If any one country is opposed to the new membership, then the country will have problem in getting the applicable country or applicant country will have problem in getting the membership. So that is very, very important. You should have a unanimous consent. So after this, if consent is provided, the process takes somewhere about 4 months to a year. So it is not a fast quick process. However, the NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg has said that he will make sure that this Finland and Sweden are able to gain the membership at a much more faster rate. Now the question comes that what will happen within this period of 4 months to a year when Sweden and Finland are not a full-fledged member of NATO and thus are not protected by NATO, and within this period if some countries, especially Russia, start to invade or begin to invade these countries. In that case, three member countries of NATO, that is United Kingdom, Denmark and Norway, have given a security guarantee to these countries that in case Russia invade these countries, all these three countries will come together and help these countries militarily. So what is the challenges? What are the challenges this country will have to face in their membership? So first challenge that we are seeing today is the Turkey's opposition to the membership of Sweden and Finland. The Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has clearly objected to the applications, and the ground of his objection is that because he alleged that both the countries, Sweden and Finland, are actually providing safe haven to the leadership of Kurdish group PKK, who has been categorized as a terrorist organization by the Turkish government, and they are fighting for a separate Kurdistan. So let us try to briefly understand about this particular topic. What is Kurdistan? So Kurdistan is actually a region that the Kurds want to develop into a separate country, and this region actually passes through 4 countries. Large part of this lies in Turkey, a small part lies in Syria, and then Iraq as well as Iran, and very small part lies even in Armenia. So they want to make the Turkish PKK group, their ideology or their objective is to merge all these areas into a separate country, Kurdistan, which obviously Turkey does not want because it will end up losing a large chunk of its eastern territory. So this is the ground why Turkey is opposing the membership of Sweden and Finland. Not only that, even they have developed an adversarial relationship because both Sweden and Finland have joined an arms embargo against Turkey in 2019. That means they are opposed to any kind of arms import by Turkey from the Western countries. So suppose that in some way, if the disagreement between Turkey and other NATO members is somehow ends and Finland and Sweden ends up joining NATO, then what will the impact of their membership? So impact we can understand from this particular diagram. As you can see from here, as of now, this is Sweden and this is Finland, who are not a non-NATO, it is not a NATO member, and these blue countries are actually a NATO member. So if both countries are admitted, first thing obviously from the point of view of Sweden and Finland will be that they will be covered under Article 5 of NATO Charter, which provides security guarantee. Article 5 clearly states that any NATO member is invaded or is any other country engaged into a war with any of the NATO member countries. In that case, all NATO member will accept that it is a war against their territory and will come together, join their hands together to act militarily, economically, or any other way as it possible. However, from the Russia's point of view, what they will have a disadvantage that it will end up doubling the border length between Russia and NATO. As of now, Russia shares about 1,200 kilometers of border with NATO. By ending up Sweden and Finland joining NATO, that border will increase by 1,300 kilometers. So total border length will become almost 2,500 kilometers. Not only that, it will also strengthen the NATO's position in the Baltic Sea. If you look at the map here, this region, it is a Baltic Sea, and here we have a small island that belongs to Sweden, that is island of Gotland. So by accession of this island of Gotland to the NATO, it will increase, or it will actually increase the assertiveness of NATO in the Baltic Sea, and this becomes very, very important because the Baltic Sea provides Russia access to two important seas, North Sea in the northern region and the Atlantic Sea in the west and south. So by increasing its position in Baltic, the NATO can form a complete circle, complete ring around Baltic Sea, and thus can block access of Russia to both North Sea as well as Atlantic Ocean. And not only that, it is also politically very, very important because Russia, and especially President Vladimir Putin of Russia, has said that he is waging a war against Ukraine because Ukraine wanted to become a NATO member. So by waging a war against a non-NATO countries, if Sweden and Finland joins NATO, it will be a direct blow to Russia and will threaten the Putin's approach to war, because the whole Putin's idea of waging a war will end up into a situation which Russia wanted to avoid at the first hand. So these are three major impacts that we can understand the membership will have. So how obviously Russia have reacted to the Sweden and Finland's bid to join NATO? So before they finally submitted their this application, Russians were very aggressive, and the spokesperson, president's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov and the foreign minister both were saying that the Sweden and Finland will, the Russia will act militarily and aggressively if Sweden and Finland joins NATO. However, once the application has been submitted, President Vladimir Putin has issued a statement very clearly said that Russia has as of now no problems with Finland and Sweden joining NATO, as NATO's expansion at the expense of these countries does not pose a direct threat to us. However, there is a catch. A catch is that he also has said that if the expansion or if the joining of these countries into NATO lead to expansion of military infrastructure into this territory or into their territory, it will certainly provoke Russia's response. So, but basically is saying that as long as their membership is concerned, it does not have a direct threat to Russia, but they should not develop or install NATO's military infrastructure, military bases or nuclear armaments on their territory. So, what Sweden and Finland has said about the NATO bases? So, both countries have agreed that even though if they become a member of NATO, they are opposed to NATO deploying any kind of nuclear weapons or setting up any kind of military bases on their territory. So basically they are agreeing that they will just become a member of NATO but will not allow, at least for now, the setting up of nuclear weapons or military bases in Swedish and Finnish territory. So that is all the whole situation is going on. We'll have to wait and watch that how Turkey reacts, or whether Turkey agrees to the accession of these countries into NATO or not, or how the whole thing plays out. So that is all as of now. Thank you very much.